Hello and welcome to the 26th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Today we have again these fascinating readings from the book of Amos, and we hear a parable from Jesus. I'm going to start with, I won't read the scriptures. Leave that to you to go and do the reading of the scriptures, but I'll make a comment on the first reading and then the gospel. Now, before we even begin with the first reading from the book of Amos, I'm going to ask you this question. How many languages do you speak? Most of us will say one, or maybe two. And if you're from Zambia, you probably will say 5, 6. Good. I want us to go back to those who answer maybe 1 or 2 languages. Just want to think about the languages that you speak. And what comes to mind when somebody asks you, how many languages do you speak? We use language to communicate, right? And so we often think that we speak English. That's a language. Those who study these things tell us that the words that we use are only a tiny percentage of what we communicate. We speak another language. The language maybe of the body, the language maybe of love. I remember hearing, is it Tyra Banks? She used to say, smile with your eyes. I'm like, how do you smile with your eyes? But that's a language of modeling, right? So there are many other languages. When I talk about how many languages do you speak, we don't only refer to speech. You speak other languages. In fact, there is a language that you uniquely speak as a person. A language that has been formed by your experience. I want to tell you this story. There is a lady here at Raboni who speaks a very difficult language. And her language is so difficult that it comes with a lot of fear and pain sometimes. Unfortunately, she lost her husband who spoke that language as well, or at least who understood the language. She has panic attacks. And I say having panic attacks is a language that is spoken. Because she has panic attacks, she can relate to a big number of people who also have panic attacks. She can be present to them and she can see things that you and I cannot see. Her husband used to be very good at this. He could see that she was about to have a panic attack and he knew how to be present. He spoke to her in her fear. He spoke to her through the panic attack. I call that speaking the language that is formed by her experience. And if I ask her, how many languages do you speak? She'll probably say 1, English, right? Then I will remind her, but you speak panic attack. Nobody understands that language like you do. I don't think there is anybody who can minister to somebody who is going through a panic attack like you can, or like your husband did. When I was at Bellarmine University, I was in a study group, and one of the ladies, to our surprise in the study group, she said to us, guys, don't tell anybody this. We were studying something about, I don't know, bipolar. And she said, I have bipolar. Or I am bipolar. The highs are high and the lows are low. Looking at her, you would never tell. But she says, I speak this language. Why do I bring up these other languages that we speak that is other than speech? In the first reading, we meet a man by the name of Amos. We heard from Amos last week. Amos is from Tekoa, from the south. He's a southern boy who is invited or called by God to go to the northern province to preach there and to become a prophet there. When he gets to the north, because of his experience, because of his life, his upbringing, there are certain things that Amos is very sensitive to, that he sees that others do not see. And when he is in the north, he sees how the rich are living, and how the poor are living. And he invites and challenges those who are comfortable to open their eyes and see the poverty that is not far from them. Amos can speak to poverty because he knows what it means to be poor. He is from the south. He is from Tekoa. Even his dressing, even his accent give him away. They say, away with this Amos fellow. For what does he have to say to us? But Amos looks as well at his own upbringing as a blessing, because it has opened his eyes to something that the rich and the powerful in the northern kingdom are blind to. I tell you what, I used to hate growing up poor. And we were poor. Even when my father died, we became the poorest of the poor. There was a class, the poorest of the poor. But somehow that poverty taught me something, and it opened my eyes to something beautiful. It was an experience that I would not wish on anybody, right? Wondering every day whether you're going to have a meal, going to school and not receiving a letter with a little cash in there, when your friends are receiving letters and cash, not being able to go out. It was a tough upbringing. However, through that rough time, something beautiful came of it. I became sensitive to how God provides. And so whenever I'm receiving good things, I just know it is Jehovah Jireh providing, God the provider. And so as you look at this first reading from the book of Amos, I want you to think about your own life, your own experience. What are things that you are sensitive to, things that you see that others don't see? You speak a unique language. It could be the language of infertility because you have been there. It could be the language maybe of comfort. You know what it means to be comfortable. It is not a sin. And you know when it is to be uncomfortable in life, and so you can speak to that. What we want to talk about is the authority of your experience, right? The authority of the experience speaks volumes. So embrace whatever cross you have to carry. Embrace your background. Embrace your fears, because they equip you to speak a language. Now we go over to the gospel passage. Interesting enough, this gospel passage is found only in the Gospel of Luke. The synoptic gospels and the other synoptic gospels and John, they don't have this particular story of Lazarus and the rich man. A couple of things to note as we go into reflecting on this passage. I want you to notice the first thing, that Jesus, whenever he tells his parables, and he has told a lot of parables, he never names people in the parables. For example, we have the story of the Good Samaritan. We don't know anybody's name there. We have the story of the prodigal son. We don't know anybody's names there. The story of Lazarus and the rich man, this is the only time that Jesus names somebody in his stories. Now, one of the things that will happen to you when you come to Africa, especially when you go to Botswana, you go there and when you introduce yourself, you say, my name is so and so. The next question that the kids usually ask is, what does it mean? Irain, what does your name mean? And the meaning of the name Lazarus is very instructive in today's gospel passage. Lazarus is a translation of the Hebrew Eleazia, which means God is my help, right? God is my help. Now, the question that I'm going to ask as we look at this person who cries out to God, his helper, and the rich man. Did this rich man do anything to Lazarus? No. Did he insult Lazarus? No. Did he kick Lazarus? No. So what then is his sin? Let's step back a little bit. In the Jewish community, and this can be as well part of the first reading, in the Jewish community, what is important for that culture is the protection of what we call the Anawim. Who are the Anawim? The Anawim are the remnant of Israel. The Anawim are the poor, the widow, and the orphan. The Anawim are those who, when the Babylonians attacked Israel, they said, let's just leave these. They are good for nothing. They'll be dead in a year or so. We cannot bring them with them. Or in business terms, the cost of bringing the poor, the widow, and the orphan over to this enslaved country, the cost was too high, so they were left behind. It seems in the scriptures there is a secret. God has a soft spot for the Anawim, these who cry out to him day and night. And we know that God doesn't drop stuff from the heavens. When God reaches out to help the Anawim, God uses who? You and I. For God now has no hands but our hands. God now has no eyes but our eyes. God has no feet but our feet. When God provides for the Anawim, God uses you and your experience. When God has to listen and see somebody who is going through a panic attack, God doesn't watch from the heavens. God uses you who have been there. So just bear that in mind. The rich man didn't do anything wrong. What is his sin? His sin is this, that he is self-centered and self-absorbed. He doesn't think about the Anawim. He doesn't care about the poor. And that in Israelite theology is wrong. We always have to care about the Anawim. Now, what I find interesting about this story is this. This Lazarus, he is at the gate. I want to look at the location. He is at the gate of the rich man's house. So several questions arise now. Why is he at the gate of the rich man's house? Doesn't this rich man have guards to chase people who gather and squatter at his gates? I think that there is a lesson in there. Remember again, be every part of the gospel, okay? Be the rich man, be Lazarus, be every part of the gospel. So the question is this: who is sitting at your gate and you don't see? Could it be that somebody in your own family is crying out for help, And because that person has always been a problem, you have decided, I am not going to see them. This is the sin of not seeing. Remember what Jesus is doing here. He's teaching his disciples on his way to Jerusalem about discipleship. A disciple who does not see beyond his boundaries is a disciple who is not fit to follow Jesus of Nazareth. No matter how poor Jesus is, no matter what the struggle is, he always looks around and says, I am blessed. How can I bless somebody? How can I bless the unawim? It is so ingrained in Jesus of Nazareth. It is so ingrained in his brother James. Remember James? I always say, read the book of James. If James says, if somebody is dying of hunger and you say, I'll pray for you, what good is that? No, you do something. You be the hands. You be the feet. If somebody is saying, oh, I'm dying of loneliness, and you choose not to pay attention? No. You and I, we are the ones who will keep them company. So the question is, who is at my door? And do I pay close attention? No, don't pay. Yeah, we let us pay attention to people thousands of miles away. But usually somebody in our own house has wounds that they would like for you and I to attend. And we must make it our priority to identify the wounds of my son, the wounds of my daughter, the wounds of my spouse. Now think about this. This Lazarus, the one who calls out to God for help. It says in the scriptures, dogs came and licked his wounds. The dogs didn't bite him. The dogs came and comforted him. He found more comfort from his fur babies than from people around him. He found company and attention, and these dogs, as they lick his wounds, they are trying to comfort, right? When the dog licks the wound, they're trying to comfort and assure the person of their presence, that person is seen. We need to see each other. You know, little did I know growing up that the little greeting that we have in Zambia, hey, mwabonwa, which means I have seen you, we have seen you, would mean so much as I grow up in my own faith journey. And the challenge of me as a disciple is to see. Do you see the Lazarus at your doorstep? Put it in another way. What is the cry of your wife, or your husband, or your child, or your brother, or your mother? What is their cry that you just have grown insensitive to? And can you make a pledge today that you work harder, you and I will work harder to see those who are closest to us? Let them not die in silence. Let their screams or their pain be seen and heard by us. May God bless you, and may God open our eyes. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.